Hello and welcome to the Gothic Unicorn. Today's video is a collaboration with Eira over at Bentley House Minis, and if you've come here from her video, welcome. Now, the prompt that we're working on today is a vampire. My natural inclination was to go for something that sided with the vampire, but I couldn't come up with anything that would work within my self-inflicted boundaries. That is, everything I make, I try to ensure it will fit in one of my existing projects or will work with something that I know is on the cards. And then I had a brainwave and decided that a vampire hunter's box would be just the thing to be hidden away in one of the dark corners of my slightly spooky house. And so that's what I'm going to do today. Hopefully, I'm going to make this without buying anything new. So I'm going to be using recycled materials, scraps, anything that I can find basically. This should be an interesting journey and hopefully you will enjoy it. Obviously, the most important thing for this Vampire Hunters kit is going to be a box to put it in. And to make that, I'm going to use my favourite material, which is recycled card. In this case, it's another cereal box. I've got a stash of them. I must admit, we do not eat that much cereal in this house, but I do keep every single box. And I'm working through them slowly. But anyway, I'm going to use a cereal box to make my box. Now, I've already cut all the pieces and I have started to colour them with an alcohol marker. Now, I love using the alcohol markers for colouring the cardstock because it doesn't make it warp like paint sometimes can, because it's not as wet. And also I can build up layers of colour and get the kind of look that I want. So that's the first step. Now, my box is going to have a fairly deep base, and then the lid is going to have some depth as well because I want to display some pieces up there. So that is the starting point of my box. Now, with the addition of my top and bottom pieces, each piece is made of 2 layers of the cereal box board to give it some more strength. I've not bothered with doubling these up because I'm going to line the piece, and I've got some felt in this quite vivid red colour to use. Now, it is actually really thin and not very nice felt, and I'm not sure where it came from, but I think it's going to be perfect for this. Now, I'm going to begin by taking one of my pieces and sticking it onto what will be the base of the box. Quite a bit of glue because this is the first one. And I'm literally going to stick it along the edge. I'm just going to wipe the glue off my fingers. And then I'm going to get my cocktail stick. I'm going to wipe as much of the glue as possible off the outside. You'll notice that I've not coloured the edges. I will go back and do that shortly. And then we have the first piece in place. Now, you may also have noticed that my base and top pieces at the moment are bigger than the box will eventually be. That is not a problem. I will trim it down in due course. I have finished gluing together my box and the lid, and as you can see, there is a reasonable depth between the two. Now, I could, if I wanted, fasten the two together, construct some form of working hinge and have a piece that was completely openable. But as I have in mind for this to be a display piece in my house, I am intending that once it is finished, it will actually sit something like that, so that you'll be able to see into the box, but the lid won't move. Now, my next stage is obviously to cover up the nutritional information of my cereal box, and to that end I have cut to size some pieces of felt. Now I am just going to put a little bit of my acrylic glue into, as it is the top of the lid. I'll bring it a bit closer to the camera, and literally just push this into place. And as you can see, I've then got a lovely red backdrop for the pieces that I'm going to make. And I'm going to do the same in the bottom of the box, even though I do have in mind to make a removable tray for in here. Should do it. And again, I'll just put this little piece of felt in. It's a very snug fit, which is what we want. We do not want gaps. And then I've got my lined box. It is possible to find real Vampire Hunter kits, but they're not that old. The contents often are. The box might be older, but they've been put together after the fascination with vampires and the entire vampire subculture began. But a lot of them are boxes that have a removable tray. Now obviously I've made this box fairly deep, so it would have a removable tray, but because I'm going to use this as a display piece, I want a tray that's going to be fixed. So I'm going to make a tray that covers approximately half of the box, and then you'll be able to see the things in the tray and the things under the tray. At least that is what I'm planning. Now with this in mind, I've been back to the cereal box and I've cut some more pieces, and I have got a piece to make my tray, 2 pieces to form the end bits, and then 2 larger pieces which are going to raise the tray up off the bottom. I'll show you something like that, so that things can be underneath but still form the actual tray on the top. I've not explained that very well, I know, but hopefully once I've glued it all together it will make a bit more sense. Now I'm going to start by sticking one of the end bits on. Well, actually I'm going to stick both of the end bits on because they are going to give me the height for sticking the other pieces on. So if I get the right piece, and a little bit of glue on a cocktail stick again, and I am just going to stick that onto the end of there. Now I do actually need to lift it up a bit so I can check my placement, but as you can see I start to get a bit of a lip which is going to form the basis of my tray. Now I've glued both lips on, and I've also glued one of the side pieces, or front and back pieces. These are the bits that are going to provide the height for what goes underneath. Now I'm about to stick the second one on, and all that I am doing is I am applying glue around the edges of the tray using a cocktail stick and a good amount of my favourite glue. Now to finish this, I'm going to take the other piece. I've just turned this round because it will be easier for me to eyeball it, and I'm going to stick it on the top. Now what I need to do is just make sure that it is level with the other pieces on the tray, which means that then it will be level with the other leg piece, and it should, in theory, be freestanding. There we have it, my freestanding little tray. I have added the same red felt to my little tray, and before I move on to the contents, I just wanted to show you that it fits into the box like so. You can see I've got two levels, and then obviously the lid will fit on like so, or actually for my display purposes like that. So that is what my basic Vampire Hunters box is going to look like. And I do apologise if you can hear any weird noises. I'm not sure what my neighbour is doing, but who knows. Now that the parts of my box are complete, I have given it a quick coat of matte Mod Podge, which doesn't actually come out matte, it gives it more of a satin finish, and it just means that it's got a bit more of a look that there might be of an old wooden box. So now I'm going to set the box aside and start on the contents. Perhaps the first thing that you think of when you think of a vampire hunter, vampire killer, are stakes. The good old stake through the heart. And to make these, I'm going to use some of these. Now these are cocktail sticks, also called in other parts of the world toothpicks. We call them cocktail sticks because it used to be the height of sophistication to serve your guests little treats on these sticks. Yes, I grew up in a time when you used to get little tiny cocktail sausages, or the wonderful cheese and pineapple air jog. Yeah, well, showing my age a bit there, but hey ho. Now these are quite simply wooden toothpicks with a point on each end. And to turn them into a stake, I'm going to cut them down. Now I'm just going to use my actual wire cutters because I don't know where the cutters that I normally use for wood are, and cut one off. Now, as you can see, that then gives me a sort of rough end. So I'm going to take a nail file and I am going to tidy up the end. Now actually, I think if it's less than tidy, it sort of looks a bit more authentic. Looks a bit more like, you know, somebody's been making them in a hurry. So I'm going to make a few of those to go in my kit. To make the prayer book, I am going to use some plain paper. This is just copier printer paper. Some cardstock from a cereal box again. I do like my cereal boxes. And for the cover, I'm going to use a bit of leather. Now I have already coloured the paper because I want this to look like it's been well thumbed, and I've used this antique linen ink, and I've done that on both sides. I cut the coloured paper into 1/2 inch strips, and I've left it a good length because inking the paper actually makes it harder to cut, so I want to have plenty to work with at this stage. Now I've put these together, and what I've done is I've used my cocktail stick to apply some glue along what will be the binding end. Now I'm going to glue some of the pages together in due course, but for the moment I've got the startings of my binding. While I waited for my binding to dry, I have cut a strip of my cereal box, which is also 1/2 inch wide, and then using a embossing tool, sometimes called a ball tool, but this is a very fine one, it's almost like a needle, I have made my cover, which you can see there, it's stuck onto the leather and is drying, but I can bend it to make the cover of my prayer book. Now I'm going to once this is dried, I'm going to stick some of the paper that I had left over on the inside to tidy it up a bit. You could do it with a different colour paper, but I've got some left over, so I'm going to use that. And then we'll be sticking the pages into the book. Now, the really cool thing about doing your binding like this is that if, when you've made your cover, it's a little bit on the snug side, you can simply peel a couple of pages off, so that when you fit it in and pull it shut, it will actually fit quite nicely. If you can see that there, that's going to fit quite nicely. Now, I've lost a little bit of footage, but what I did was I trimmed my pages down to the correct size for the cover, and then I glued them in. Now, to keep them in place, because obviously I wanted to make sure it all glued together right, I wrapped some extra bits of the paper around my little prayer book, and I used an ordinary clothes peg to just hold it in place. And I've used that just so that the peg didn't mark the leather. And once it was dry, I have just added some silver, it's a silver paint marker basically, around the edges, just to give that look that a lot of old religious books have, you know, of gilding on the edges. So there we have it, our little prayer book. Interest in vampires began with Dracula, and in the novel the act of decapitation is as important to the killing of a vampire as the good old-fashioned stake through the heart. So I need a knife for my vampire hunter's kit. Now, I've made knives in the past using foil trays and cardstock, but online I saw somebody who'd used an unusual looking toothpick to make a knife. As it happens, the last time I was in one of our local discount stores, I found some of these toothpicks, which do indeed appear to have a knife at one end. And this is what I'm going to use in order to make my vampire killing knife. I took my craft knife and I trimmed one of these toothpicks down so that I'd got the sort of knife blade looking bit, and the bit that I think could pass for a knife handle. And then I used a nail file just to tidy up the end, because the plastic didn't cut the nicest, but it was solvable. And then I've coloured it. I'll use my hand so you can see that. I have coloured that with my silver paint marker and a black permanent marker. I'll just turn it over, and I've got a quite evil looking knife there to go into my vampire hunter's kit. Now, the next thing that I'm going to make is a mallet. These feature in most of the vampire hunter killer kits that I've seen pictures of. And I think it actually makes sense, because as opposed to in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where it is a simple sort of stab the stake into them and the vampire turns to dust, it takes a bit more effort. And so to do that, I'm going to use some dowel. Now, I've got two different sizes of dowel. I have got a 1/8 inch diameter and a 3/16 inch diameter, and I've cut two pieces. A smaller piece of the 3/16, which is going to be the head of my mallet, and then a longer piece of the 1/8, which is going to be the handle. So what I've done with the bits of the mallet is I've carved a hole in the head, and I've made a bit of a point in the handle part, and now I'm going to glue the two together. Now, I'm actually swapping to wood glue to do this rather than my usual acrylic glue, and I'm going to start off by putting some wood glue into the hole. Let's pop that back down, and I'm also going to put a bit of glue onto the point. Then what I'm going to do is going to attach part A to part B. Now, because this is wood glue, it is going to take a while to dry, so I'm going to put this aside and let it do its thing. For my next piece, I'm using some craft matchsticks. Now, these are great, they're easily available and they're not too expensive, but in keeping with the fact they're matchsticks, they're not the best of wood, and if you're not prepared to have to recut pieces because they will flake, maybe you need to look for a square dowel. But I got these, and in keeping with my trying not to buy anything for this project, I've worked with these. Now I'm making a cross for my kit, and so I cut 3 pieces, a long piece and 2 small pieces, and I've glued them together with some wood glue. Now I know it's a little bit lopsided and everything, and I am going to, once the glue is set tomorrow now, I am going to file the one side down a little bit to even it up a bit, but there we have a little wooden cross to go in my kit. Now, I did have to admit defeat and buy something to be able to finish this project, and what I had to buy were some tiny little clear bugle beads. I've got some somewhere, I just can't locate them at the moment, and I'm going to make some little vials of holy water using one of my hole punches. Now this hole punch is tiny. You can see I've got 2 other sizes there, which I think are about 6 and 3 mil. This one punches a hole that is even smaller. You can see that. And I'm going to punch a couple of these and glue them onto the top of my little beads to make the lids of the vials, and then I'm going to put a little tiny bit of glue on the bottom to seal them, so that when they're in the kit you can't actually see that they haven't got a bottom to them. So what I've done is I've put some glue on what will be the bottom of the vial, and I'm going to add a little tiny bit of glue at the top end. You'll see that little white dot there, that is my glue. And then I'm going to grab the little piece of black foam that I punched out, and I'm going to position that on top. I might have to check how it fits, but that then gives me a perfect little vial of holy water. The last thing that I've made for my kit is some garlic bulbs out of air dried clay. Now they're not brilliant, I simply made a vaguely garlic shaped blob and repeated a couple of times, and then I've painted it with some light grey paint. Now these are going to go in the bottom of the box, and since I figure that this kit is going to be over 100 years old, if the garlic was original it wouldn't be very good now anyway, so I think I can get away with it. I do want to maybe put a bit of dirt or some kind of shading on there so it actually looks a bit less clean and clinical, but it's going to do what I need it to do, and hopefully it will look good once it's in the box. My next stage, now that the box and the contents are completed, is to actually put it all together. Now to do that, obviously I'm going to have to put the contents in the box, and I'm going to stick them into place, but because obviously these things would not stay in the box, for instance my little prayer book is going to go in the lid, which is going to be displayed like that. Now it's not going to sit where I want it to sit, somewhere like that. If it's at any kind of angle, it's going to keep sliding down. So it needs some kind of strap to hold it in, which is what it would have normally, something to hold it in. So I've made some little paper straps. They're just false. They're literally just some thin pieces of copy paper that I've coloured with a black marker. Nothing more complicated than that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them into pieces to fit over the bits. Back to the prayer book again, like so. Let's see if you can see that. It won't show so good because it is black against black, and then it'll be fastened down to the box so that it actually looks like it's holding it in place. I have glued the strap onto the little prayer book. Hopefully you can see there's enough difference between the two materials, and now I'm just going to glue it into there. I've actually started to add a bit of dirt to the lining of the lid, because I figured that after all this time it wouldn't be particularly clean. And all I'm going to do is add a bit of glue to the back of the prayer book, and then just a tiny little dot to each end of the strap. And I'm going to then pop this into position like so. Then just make sure that the straps are fastened down with my cocktail stick, and then my prayer book is going to stay in place no matter what happens. And I'm going to repeat that for the other items that are going to live in the lid. Now, I'm not going to say it wasn't fiddly, especially sticking down the straps that attach the little vials of holy water, but the pieces that I want displayed in the lid are now in place. I have stuck the knife in place in the bottom of the box, and I'm now going to add the mallet. I'm not going to put a strap over the mallet because the end of it is going to be covered by the shelf, so I figure I can actually get away with that. And I'm just going to put a bit of glue on the reverse. Grab my tweezers, which I had a moment ago, but of course I put them into place, and I'm going to put this into the box and just push it down so that it's in place on the bottom, and that is the bottom layer completed. So I have made a little fake fasten to go on the stakes, and they're now ready to go in the box, and I'm just trying to decide which way around I'm going to put them. That way, I think. What I've done is I've got a paint marker, which is a very metallic silver, and using a cocktail stick, which I'd misplaced because don't I always, I have been putting some little marks so it looks like there's some kind of fasten on these straps. I'm just going to... Now I've used this pen, this particular paint pen, because it is very metallic. It's oil based, and it doesn't take a lot to actually get an effect. Now I'm going to fit this into there, and to do that I'm going to use a bit of glue just on the bottom of the structure that I made to hold my tray. Doesn't need to be a lot, and I'm just going to push that down into place, and then the base of my box is all together. I have added a few little finishing touches. I've added some handles to the sides using the coloured paper I was using for the straps inside. I've added a little faux lock a little plate on the top and a fake hinge on the back, and those are all made out of some kitchen foil scraps. And I've also been back in and added a bit more dirtying to the inside just to give it a bit more character and age. And here we have my finished Vampire Hunters kit in my little photo booth along with Granny. And if I just swing this round, you can see into the box and you can see all the contents. I'm really pleased with how this has turned out, and I think it is going to be taking pride of place somewhere in my house once it's finished renovating. I'd like to thank you for watching and hope that you will consider subscribing to see more of my mini makes, and I will see you again soon. Bye.